We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 43a. On the previous summer, the Mishnah listed a bunch of items which a Shomer Chinam does not swear on, and the Gemara asked, where do we know that from? And the Gemara now quotes a Brisa. So the Brisa says that the Pasuk says, Ki yiten ish el re'eu, it says a person is going to give to his friend Klal. That is a generalization. Kesef o Kalim, then it says Kesef, silver, or Kalim, vessels, Prat, that's a specification. And then it says Lishmor, to watch, Chazaru Klal, that's another generalization. So klalu pratu klal, that's a klalu pratu klal, iato don elakain haprat. And the rule is that we say it has to be things that are similar to what was specified. Mahaprat meforish davar hamataltal v'gufo mammon, just like what was specified in the pasuk. These are things that are movable objects and they have intrinsic value. Afkol davar hamataltal v'gufo mammon. So too the halacha by shomer chinam, that the shomer chinam takes a shvua that is specifically by things that are movable objects that have intrinsic value. Yatsu karkos she'ein metaltalin, that excludes land because that's not a movable object. Yatsu avodim shehukshu lekarkos, that excludes slaves because they're compared to land. Yatsu shtaros, it also excludes documents she'af al pi shemetaltalin, even though they are movable objects. Ein gufan mammon, they don't have intrinsic value. And hektish, the reason why hektish is excluded is because reyehu ksiv, it says his friend, and that excludes hektish. Rashi explains, Ki yiten ish el re'eu kesef v'kelim lishmor, Parsha Shomer Chinam, this is the Parsha of Shomer Chinam. Tetanya b'hashoel, we learned in a Brisa in Parak HaShoel in Bab Metzia, Parsha Rishona, that first section b'Shomer Chinam, that's talking about Shomer Chinam. Ushniya b'Shomer Socher, the second section is Shomer Socher. Ushalishis b'Shoel, the third section is Shoel. V'gabe Shomer Chinam ein lo olav ela shvua, by Shomer Chinam, the only thing he has on him is that he has to take an oath. That's what it says over there. K'dichsiv, as it's written, V'nikra balabayis elhu Elohimim lo shalach yado. Again, it says that he's going to come close to the court to take a shvua, that he wasn't sholeach yad, that he didn't misuse what he was watching over. And so in any case, again, we learn from these psukim to exclude these various items from the shvua. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, no say sacher, that if you have a shomer sacher that's a paid watchman, eino meshalim, he is not going to pay. Rashi explains, eino meshalim, he's not going to pay. Kineva v'aveda haksuvabo, that means to say he's not going to pay, let's say it's stolen from him or it's lost. Generally speaking, a shomer sacher pays for that, but again, on these items, he's not going to pay. L'chayiv, he's obligated to pay. Dechsivim ganov yuganev me'imo, like it says in the pasuk. In any case, the Gemara says menolan. From where do we know this? And the Gemara says the Tanu Rabbanan, as the rabbis taught, Kitin ishel re'eu klal. It says a man gives to his friend. That's a generalization. Chamur o shor o sed. Then it says a donkey, an ox, and a sheep. Prat, that's a specification. V'chol behem lishmor, any animal to watch. Chazaru klal, that again is a generalization. Klalu pratu klal. When you have a klalu pratu klal, that's the same as we had above. So it has to be something again that's a movable object that has intrinsic value. Ad hektish re'eu ksiv, and again similar to what we had just above, it says re'ehu is written in the pasuk, and therefore that excludes hektish. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, Yesh dvorim shein kekarka ve'inon kekarka. There are things that they are like land, but they're not like land. And the Gemara says, Mechlal, it implies, the Mishnah implies, Rabbi Meir savar, that Rabbi Meir holds, Kol ha'mechuber lekarka, eino kekarka, anything that's attached to the ground is not considered the ground. But if that's the case, adamiflgi betu'unos, instead of arguing with regards to vines that are laden with fruit, liflagi besruko, so you should just have a situation of vines, let's say that have no fruit on them whatsoever, because the point over here is that the vines themselves, which are attached to the ground, are not considered to be the ground. That's what Rabbi Meir should have said. And so the Gemara instead says, Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina says, Hacha ba'novim omdos lihi botzer kamiflagi. Here we're talking about grapes, and the grapes are ready to be harvested. That's specifically where Rabbi Meir says it's not considered like karka. To Rabbi Meir savar kivitzuros damion, Rabbi Meir says that it's considered like it's already been harvested. That's why it does not have a status of karka, of land. Rabbanan sabri, but the Rabbanan hold lo kivitzuros damion. It is not considered as if they were harvested. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Einish boin elal dovar shabemida v'shabemishkal. One only takes an oath when it's something again that can be measured, that has a weight. The Gemara says, Amar Abaye, Abaye says, Lo shanu ela do'amar le bayistam. We only learn this halach if the person just says a house without specifying which house. Aval amar le bayis zeh mole. But let's say the person said this particular house that's full of produce. So then yediyah ta'nase. So then his claim is clear, and there actually would be an oath. The Gemara continues, Amar le Rava. Rava said to him, Yachi, if so, adatani seifa, instead of saying at the end of the Mishnah, Zeh omer ad haziz v'zeh omer ad hachalon. This one says until the ledge, and this one says until the window. Chayiv, that in that that case there's an obligation to a shvua. But liflog v'lisni b'dida, but we could have actually made the distinction within the case itself. When is this true? When the person says bayis mole, a full house without specifying this particular house. Avol bayis zeh mole, but if he says this full house, so then chayiv, then the person would be obligated. That's what the Mishnah should have said, according to the way you're understanding the Mishnah. Elamar Rava, rather Rava says, Liolamenu chayiv ayit shiyitanenu b'davar shebamida shebemishkol v'shebeminyan. The person is only obligated if the claim is made by something that can be measured by weight or by number. V'yodelo, and then the admission has to be b'davar shebamida v'shebemishkol v'shebeminyan. Again, he has to admit in something that can be measured or by weight or by number. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Kivase de Rava, we have a brisa that supports Rava. Kor tvua li biyadcha, let's say a person says, you have a core of tvua of mine. V'halo omer ein lach biyadi, and the person says, I don't have anything of yours. Pater, he's exempt, there's no shvu in that case. Menorah gedola yesh li biyadcha, there's a large menorah that you have of mine. Ein lach biyadi ela menorah katana, he responds, I only have a small menorah. Pater, in this case, pater. A zora gedola yesh li biyadcha, let's say he says, you have a large belt of mine. Ein lach biyadi ela ezora katana, no, I only have a small belt. Pater, he's pater in that case. Avolamar lo kor tvua yeshli biyadcha, but if he says, you have a core of tvua of mine, v'halo omer ein lach biyadi ala lesach, and he responds that I only have a lesach, which is a half a core, so there he's responding from the same type as the claim, so chayiv, so then he's obligated to take a shvuot moed b'mixas. Or similarly, menorah bas eser litrin yeshli biyadcha, menorah of 10 litrin, that's mine, is in your possession, and he responds, ein lach biyadi ala bas chamesh litrin, I only have one of 5 litrin, so chayiv there also he's going to be obligated to take the shvuah. Klalo shel davar, the general rule is liolamenu chayvat shitinenu bedavar shebemida v'shebemishkol v'shebeminyan. He's only liable if the claim is made something that can be measured by its size or its weight or its number. V'yodelo bedavar shebemida v'shebemishkol v'shebeminyan, and the admission has to be also something again that can be measured by its size, its weight, its number. Klalo shel davar, and so the Gemara now says when it says in this brisa klalo shel davar, the general rule is leisuye mai. What is that coming to include? Lav leisuye bayis zeh mole. Isn't that coming to include a case where a person would say this house which is full, which again that Rava said also is included in a case where there is a shvua, and so therefore the brisa over here as well, when the brisa is saying klala shel davar, it's including exactly this case. And the Gemara continues, Umaishna menorah gedolo menorah katana, mashatanu lo hodelo, umashahodelo lo tanu. Now what's the difference in the case of the large menorah and the small menorah? We say that the claim, what's being claimed, is not what he's admitting to. He's admitting to a different item than the one that is being claimed. And so over there we say it's not moed b'mixas. So if so, bas eser bas chamesh nami. So it seems to be the same case by the menorah of 10 litrin, and then he admits by a menorah of 5. That seems to be exactly the same case. We should say mashatanu lo hodelo. What was claimed from him he didn't admit to, and what he admitted to is not what was claimed. So why over there is it suddenly considered to be a case of moed b'mixas with a shvua? And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says, Hacha b'menorah shel chulias askin. And here we're talking about a menorah that's constructed from different segments to kamod alei minah. So therefore, in that case, he actually is admitting from the menorah itself. He just says there are less segments. The Gemara says, Yachi, if so, is zura nami. But when it comes to the belts as well, you have a large belt and small belt. So nisni v'luchmei bedalfi, we can also have that case as a case where there are different segments, different components that are put together. Ela delaifi lo katani. Rather, obviously, we're not learning in this brisa cases of different segments that are put together. Hachanami b'shel chulias lo katani. Well, that's true by menorah also. We shouldn't be talking about menorahs that are different segments. So why again is that case of menorah of 10 litrin and then he admits to 5 litrin? Why is that included as moed b'mixas? And so the Gemara instead says, Alam Rabbi Abba bar Memel. Rather, Rabbi Abba bar Memel says, Shani menorah, it's different by a menorah. Hoel v'yachol legorah, because it's possible to scrape it. U'lahamida al chamesh litrin, and then you'll make it that it's a menorah of 5 litrin. And Rashi explains, legorah u'lahamida al mishkol chamesh litrin. You're able to scrape it, and then it's going to have a weight of 5 litrin. Aval b'gdolo katana lekal memar hachi. But when the person says a big menorah, and then he admits, the other person admits to a small menorah, there you can't say the same thing. Uveizora, also by the belt, lekal memar chotach, and you can't say, well, cut from it, sharei rosheh nikar, because the heads, the ends of the belt are nikar, they're recognizable, and therefore that's not possible in that situation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hamalves Chavero al Hamashkon, if somebody lends money to his friend, and it's al Hamashkon, he lends him money on collateral, so the lender is now taking something as collateral, V'yavad Hamashkon, and then the collateral is lost. Now, Amar Lo, now he says to him, Sela hil visicha olav, so I lent you a Sela, the shekel hayashav, and the collateral was only worth a shekel, it was only worth half of the loan. V'halo Omer, now the borrower, he says, Lo, no, ki ela Sela hil visani olav, again, you did lend me a Sela, v'Sela hayashav, and actually it was worth a Sela, and so therefore essentially he's saying, the borrower is saying, I don't owe you anything. So Potter, so in that case he's exempt. That would be a case of Kofar Bakol. He's denying everything. Sela hil visicha olav v'shekel hayashav. Now let's say the lender says that it was worth a Sela, meaning the loan rather, I lent a Sela, but it was worth a shekel, the collateral was worth a shekel. V'halo Omer, and then the lover responds, Lo, ki ela Sela hil visani olav, no, you did lend me a Sela, u'shlosha dinarim hayashav, but it actually was worth a little more. It's a partial admission. He says it was worth 3 dinar, there are 4 dinar that are total in a Sela, so he says it was worth more than a shekel, it was worth more than a half a Sela, it was worth 3 dinarim. So here the lova is partially admitting, so chayiv, so in that case he's going to be chayiv to take a shvuah. That would be a case of moed b'mixas. The Mishnah continues, Sela hil visani olav, let's say it's the lova that says that you lent me a Sela on this collateral, ushtayim hayashava, but the collateral was actually worth more, it was worth 2 sloim, and again you lost the collateral, so now the lova is saying to the malva that you owe me money. V'halo Omer, now the malva responds, Lo, ki ela Sela hil visicha olav, it's not true. I lent you a Sela, v'Sela hayashav, and the collateral was worth a Sela, so I don't owe you anything. So it's essentially Kofar Bakol, he's denying everything. So Potter, he's exempt, he doesn't take a shvuah by Kofar Bakol. Sela hil visani olav, now let's say the borrower says that you lent me a Sela, ushtayim hayashav, and he claims the collateral is worth 2 sloim. V'halo Omer, and the malva responds, Lo, ki ela Sela hil visicha olav, no, it is true that I lent you a Sela, v'chamisha dinarim hayashav, but it was worth 5 dinarim, so it wasn't worth quite as much as you think it was. I do owe you some money, but it wasn't worth quite as much. So there he's moed b'mixas, the malva is moed b'mixas, so chayiv, so he's going to be chayiv to take a shvuah. And the Mishnah says, Umi nishba, now who's the one that's going to take the shvuah? Misha pikadon etzlo. The one to take the shvuah in this case should be the one that has the deposit, which would be the lender. Why is that? Because shema yishav azeh, because we're afraid if the borrower takes the shvuah, maybe the borrower will swear, v'yotzi haloas hapikadon, and then the lender will take out the pikadon and really prove the borrower wrong in terms of how much the pikadon is worth, and that would be problematic. Rashi explains, shekel is a chatzi sela, shekel is a half a sela. Mi nishba kama haisashava. Who's the one that takes the oath how much the collateral was worth? Misha pikadon etzlo, the person who has the pikadon, meaning hamalva, the lender. And Rashi says, the Gemara is going to explain exactly what case we're going on over here. V'yotzi halo es hapikadon, he'll take out the pikadon, v'shemalo dikdik zeb v'shuma, and then maybe the person was not accurate, the borrower would not have been accurate maybe in his estimate of the value, and then he's going to have been proven wrong that he essentially took an oath that was false, and that will actually disqualify him from testimony and from taking Shevuos, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis.